That sounds fun. That sounds fun.
Hi, friends. Welcome to another episode of That Sounds Fun. I'm your host, Annie F. Downs. I am so happy to be here with you today. Just a reminder, today is day 2 of Advent. We're going to talk more about it today, but it's not too late to join us in our Stay Tuned Advent series. You can still grab the full digital bundle right now and jump in. If you want to hear the first day, we put it right here on the That Sounds Fun feed. You can listen to it. It's sitting there for you yesterday. So you can go listen, and you can find everything you need over at anniefdowns.com/Advent. And before we dive into today's conversation, I want to tell you about one of our incredible sponsors, AG1. You know by now that I am a big fan of AG1. We've been partnering with them for a long time, but it is starting my day off right for a long time as well. I truly love drinking it in the morning because it just makes me feel more clear-headed and ready for the day. In fact, this week I missed 2 days and I got back in the rhythm today and I feel different. It is a lot to keep up with, a ton of different vitamins and supplements to take, but I love that AG1 allows me to knock it all out with 1 scoop mixed in really cold water. And I like to add a little frozen lemon juice to it for something fun. So as the new year gets closer, try AG1 for yourself. It's the perfect time to start a new healthy habit. And AG1 is offering new subscribers a free $76 gift when you sign up. That's awesome. You'll get a welcome kit, a bottle of D3K2, and 5 free travel packs in your first box. So make sure to check out drinkag1.com/soundsfun to get this offer. That's drinkag1.com/soundsfun to start your new year on a healthy note. Today on the show, I get to talk with a longtime friend, Lanier Ivester. I have known Lanier for over 30 years, and I don't think I've talked publicly much about my grandmother's bookstore, but Lanier worked there growing up, so this conversation is so sacred to me, to relive some of those memories, to get to talk about my grandmother, and then to get to talk about the Advent and Christmastide seasons, which y'all know are also really sacred to me. Lanier's very first long-coming book, we have been dying for her to write a book, is called Glad and Golden Hours, a companion for Advent and Christmastide. It's out now. We talk about why this book was what she wanted to write first, talk through some of the very best parts. I mean, the whole book is just beautiful, y'all. It is absolutely beautiful. I think you're really going to love getting to know her. And also for our Single Purpose League friends, we recorded a little bonus for you as well that will be available on Single Purpose League feed. I can't wait for you to hear this conversation. So let me introduce you to my longtime friend, Lanier Ivester.
That sounds fun.
Here's the problem, Lanier. I have 1,000 things we can start with. And so I'm like, where do we start? Do we start with, we've been friends for 30 years? Okay, so welcome to That Sounds Fun.
Thank you.
I'm very glad you're here. Have you done a lot of podcasts around the book releasing?
I have.
Yeah.
I've done about, I think this is number 10.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
Are you tired of talking about it yet?
No.
No, I can't imagine. There is a sentence in this book. I'm going to open to it. It's page 100 for all of our friends at home who have their copy of Glad and Golden Hours. Page 100, you say, as you can probably imagine by now, I was never content merely to read of something that captivated my fancy. My instinct was to give it form and substance amid the more prosaic realities of my late 20th century suburban life. That could be your thesis statement of your life.
Probably.
Do you feel that way? I'm like, that is, will you kind of go into, how did you know that was true about you? Did you know that was true about you when we were young?
I don't think I realized because it was so native, I don't think I realized until I was older.
Yeah.
And I would talk to different friends who would say, oh, I can't subscribe to Victoria magazine anymore because it makes me sad. And I was like, why?
Yeah.
Like, I could never get my head around that because it just made me want to live a beautiful life, you know? And I think I did the same thing with, my highlights magazine as a child, like I just, how can I make this part of my life?
Yes.
So.
I had a subscription to Victoria magazine because of you.
No kidding.
Yes, because I used to see it at your house and I loved it so much. And 20 years ago when I lived in Marietta.
Yeah.
Okay, so we should back up and tell people.
Yes.
Our parents have known each other long before we were born.
Yes.
You worked at my grandmother's bookstore.
I did.
When you were a teenager. I was
early 20s.
Yeah. And your sister did as well.
She did.
And so, I mean, literally, we were doing the math before we started. We have actually known each other for 30-something years.
Yeah.
30. That is.
I remember when your grandmother was looking for the first edition of Christie for your high school graduation gift.
Yes.
Like, she was so excited.
It is one of the most treasured things I own, too.
Yeah.
You already got me crying.
I'm sorry. I'm going to cry too. I loved your grandmother so much.
Yeah.
So much.
It was so fun to read the book and see you talk about her. Because I've never talked about her in one of my books. So I'm like, you win for being the first person to put my grandmother in a book. And I was thinking this morning when I was reading through the end of it, I read some of it over the weekend, and I was thinking this morning, like, I don't know that I've ever publicly talked about my grandmother owned a bookstore that was open every Wednesday and Saturday. Y'all were homeschooled, and did you work on Wednesdays as well, or did you just work on Saturdays?
No, we worked on Wednesdays and Saturdays.
What was it like? Tell me about working there.
Oh my goodness. It was like stepping back in time. I mean, I will never forget the first time I discovered your grandmother's shop. I think it was Muriel Cash that took me there for the first time. But no, it was so lovely because just, when there weren't customers in the shop, I would just sit in that green chair and talk to your grandmother. And she introduced me to so many authors that just really shaped my life. And, when I was there alone, if she had gone to the Italian kitchen for lunch.
That's right. The one place.
I would just curl up with books or copy recipes out of the Cross Creek cookbook.
Yeah.
And I remember, she always had some kind of homemade goodie in the top drawer of her desk.
That's exactly right.
And do you remember she would save the boxes that checks came in?
Yes.
And I just remember the postman coming down, and she'd always have a box of those little sausage rolls.
Yes. And a box from old checks.
Yeah.
Wow.
And I remember the first time Philip, my husband, came into the shop to visit me. This is before we were dating, and he just, happened to stop by, And your grandmother just loved him so much. And, there had been other guys that had come by to visit me in the bookshop, whatever, but she was like, that one.
Yeah.
She just loved him. And I was so happy that she got to meet him, because I remember her telling me, never marry someone that you don't respect more than anyone you've ever met in your life.
Really?
Mm-hmm. And she said that was...
Yeah,
I was.
She passed away when I was 20. 20? Yeah. And so we never really talked about grown-up stuff and like that. And we should tell people the bookstore was not like a Barnes & Noble. It was all used and rare books. So the shelves were just... The whole place had a smell that nothing else smells like.
I know.
Because it was just 3 rooms. It was only 3 rooms, and the middle room's barely a room. It was 2.5 rooms.
Oh, but I love that middle room, sitting on that stool, wrapping the books.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that is the thing I learned how to do the most is wrap. I don't even know how to explain. Can you explain to people what we did?
It's like putting a Mylar cover over the dust jacket so it protects it, or you can kind of repair it,
Yeah.
But it's so legit.
That's when I remember working at the bookstore at the same time as you, is on the Saturdays where I would come in, and I was in late elementary, early middle school, and I would wrap the books while y'all actually sold them. Yeah. It was such a great bookstore. My dad still has the bookstore sign hangs up in my dad's office.
I love that.
Yeah.
Downs Books open Wednesday and Saturday, 10 to 4, or by appointment, or by chance.
Or by chance.
Well, I have to tell you a quick funny story about working there. Your grandmother didn't use a calculator.
Right.
And so she told me that whenever my friends came in, that I could give them 20% off any of the books, but that I needed to add 5% sales tax.
Okay.
And so I remember one time Philip coming in, and I was just, trying to be super charming and witty and maintain, an unending stream of brilliant conversation with him while I am totaling up this stack of books that he was buying and trying to take off 20% and add 5 in my head. And I'm like, he's an engineer. He's going to think I'm such an idiot.
But there was no calculator to use.
There was no calculator.
And we did not have phones.
No.
So, no, not at all. Oh, my gosh. And he was probably just trying to I'll impress this girl by buying smart books. And you're like, I got to do this math.
He was buying French poetry books.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. But probably actually reading them too,
Yes.
right? Yeah, I know. Will you talk about how y'all met?
Yeah,
I love that story.
So we actually met. It was a mutual friend
Yeah.
who introduced us. But my friend group had gotten really into Scottish country dancing, which is like the Scottish version of the English country dancing,
Yeah.
like you see in the Pride and Prejudice and all the bonnet dramas. But anyway, it's a little rowdier.
Yeah.
It's very fun.
Yeah.
But, this is right about the time that like all the Jane Austen movies were coming
Yes,
out. And
yes.
so when we discovered this, my friends and I just lost our minds. But Philip's, so the class was on Thursday nights, and Philip's friends all went swing dancing on Thursday nights.
Which was also very big at the time.
Which was also
we were
very
all
big.
swing
Like,
dancing a lot.
Squirrel nut zippers and all
Yeah,
that.
yeah.
And so this friend brought him to the Scottish country dancing class before going swing dancing, and Philip just really loved Scottish dancing.
And that I remember when you told me that again years and years ago. I was like, they met at a Scottish dancing, Scottish dancing class. Because y'all are one of the stories of like sometimes God just makes two versions of a person. Like I mean, y'all are very different, but like two people who like so many of the same things, and y'all find each other somehow.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
It is crazy. And like we grew up in the same county.
Yeah.
Like we knew so many of the same people. We didn't meet until we were in our 20s. but-
Yeah. Did y'all right away move into your house you're in now? Mm-hmm. Okay.
did.
Was it his house before?
Yes. So he grew up there. He grew up in the rough house.
Got it. That was like his family home.
That was his family home. And then when he was in high school, his parents moved to Alpharetta.
Okay.
And they put it on the market. Long story, tried to sell it. It for whatever reason, couldn't, didn't.
Yeah.
But then when Philip was at Tech, he started renting it from his parents and subletting it
Okay.
to his friends. So
Yeah.
it was like a bachelor pad for
Yeah, I was
like
about to say
10 years.
when you went to visit back then, I mean, you have turned it into just it's gorgeous.
Oh.
But back then, was it just a bunch of dudes? Was it like a frat house? Wow.
Super, great guys, absolutely. And they always had parties, and they were so hospitable. And
Yeah.
I would come, and like I remember the first time I went, there was a like in the den, they had some theater seats from the Roxy, like all lined up in the den, like facing the bookcase, and
Yeah.
there were 4 televisions in the
Oh,
bookcase
my
with 4
gosh.
different ball games, like going at the same.
Yeah. And then stadium seating.
Yeah.
That is wild. That is wild. Okay, so you've always been a writer.
Yeah.
That is like back when we were bloggers,
Mm-hmm.
you were one of the finest writers that we all got to read. I mean, it
Oh.
was just, I miss blogging a lot of days for one. Do you ever miss it?
I do.
Yeah.
I really do.
Just that like daily practice
I know.
of getting words out was so helpful to me.
Me too. Yeah, it was a good discipline, and I do miss it. And I miss the connections.
Yeah, that's right. Because even if you and I didn't see each other for weeks back then, because I was living right in your town,
Yeah.
we all knew exactly what was going on because we all read each other's blogs all the time.
Right,
Yeah.
right.
Okay, so when did that when did blogging and writing turn into making a Advent Christmastide book?
Yeah. So, I've always wanted to write a book. That's always been
know.
the goal. Books, not books.
All of us who know you have always wanted you to write books too.
And I've always wanted to write an Advent and Christmas book because it really is my favorite time of year. But in my adult life, God has really helped me mine some of the riches and the dark places of this season. So I pretty much have had a file on my computer for about 15 years,
No
of
way.
like just dumping ideas into, and someday I'm going to do this. But I guess it was almost 4 years ago. My friend Jennifer Trafton and I were sitting at my kitchen table. She'd come to visit me for a few days before Christmas, and we had just been, it was Christmas 2020, which is the weirdest, loneliest Christmas any of us, I think, in our lifetime had
Right.
known.
Will ever know. God willing.
Please, God, I know. But, there were so many things that I was doing that anyway, even though we weren't having like the large scale, Christmas that we normally did.
yeah.
And, Jennifer and I just really were able to spend a lot of time talking about some of the whys behind the wherefore of it all. And by the end of her visit, I said one morning, hey, look, and I need to clarify this. Jennifer Trafton is an incredibly gifted author and successful author, and she's also my writing partner. So for years, I mean, maybe 10 years or more, we've been meeting regularly over FaceTime and like sharing our work and, holding each other to self-imposed deadlines and things, But anyway, she's also an incredibly accomplished artist and illustrator. And I said, hey, if I write this book, will you, and I didn't even get the question out of my mouth. Like she was like, absolutely, I will illustrate it.
Wow.
And so, it would not have been the book that it is without her.
Beautiful.
I mean, it's beautiful.
She captured you incredibly.
Well, and she captured the themes of the book, and I just feel like she, there's illustrations of my goats and my cats and my favorite teapot, and she just really, it was a very, very personal, but just a delightful partnership. So
Advent. When I think of Advent, I think of you, probably because you taught it to me first. And like you said, you have 12th night parties every year, which was, like we said, I think that's the last time we saw each other. Yes. Was before I moved to Nashville, the 12th night before I moved to Nashville. Yes. What is it about Advent, Lanier? Why do you stretch Christmas not based on Christmas movies or based on, okay, I'm going to start decorating right now? Because I do want to talk about the second greening, because I think the second greening is so interesting. But what is it about Advent that has always stood out to you? And Christmastide, honestly.
Yeah. Well, I mean, simply, I've always loved it. I mean, I grew up in a home that it was, Christmas was a very, very special time of year. And I realized the older I've gotten that I don't take for granted the fact that, I have happy Christmas memories as a child. Yeah. But, as I grew older and started to engage with some of the disappointments of life and the challenges and the griefs, it was, concurrent with the time that I discovered Advent as a season. Oh, wow. Because I wasn't raised in that tradition. Yeah. I was raised Baptist. Yeah. And even though the whole Christmas season was very special and set apart, we didn't practice like the 4 weeks of Advent. Yeah. But, it was such a joy for me to discover that there was just this whole set apart season leading up to Christmas, and that Christmas traditionally was a 12-day feast. Yeah. Yeah. And, realizing that historically, the church has set aside this time, not just to prepare for Christmas, but to, it's a season of contemplation. Yeah. It can be kind of penitential sometimes. It's a season of acknowledged waiting. Yeah. And that became very precious to me. And Advent is a safe space for our grief. Yeah. Wow. And the fact that the church has this whole built-in season to acknowledge that was just profoundly life-altering for me. Yeah. Because, like I said, Advent makes space for our grief. But the other side of it is the fact that Christmas makes room for our joy. Wow. And we need ample space for both of them. Yeah. So, Lanier, as we are starting Advent right now, it's also a very short Advent this year, which makes me sad. I didn't know this could happen. I know.
I haven't quite loved Advent long enough to have had this happen before. Yeah. And I was like, 3 weeks?
No,
that's
not
enough.
Right. It's not right.
It's way too short. One of the things you said in the book that I thought was really profound is you said Advent felt more like Lent. Mm-hmm. So will you talk a little bit, and you've alluded to it a couple of times, the gifts in the darkness, and how Advent, I've never heard anyone say Advent is a great place for holding grief. Will you talk about that? I don't know. I don't know about that.
Yeah. Well, I think that the expectations of the season that, Christmas is supposed to be such a happy time. Uh-huh. And I mean, it is a happy time. It can be a happy time, but it also can be a really, really hard time. Yeah. And, with every year that passes, it can kind of foreground another year has gone by with things not being the way we want them to be.
Yes.
And it can just really bring our disappointments into sharp relief. And it is very easy to look at the world around us and just feel our loss and our lack exacerbated by the merriment that we see everywhere. And, just realizing that Advent represents centuries of waiting on God's promised fulfillment that he gave us in Christ, but we're still living in a season of a partially fulfilled hope.
Yeah. Wow.
And, I like to say, Holy Saturday is kind of the place that people say that we live, between the cross and the resurrection, like between the now and the not yet. But Advent is that space too,
Wow.
Advent is essentially where we live, in between two perfect hopes,
I think that's really interesting, Lanier, because this year in our Advent series we created, it's called Stay Tuned, an Advent for those already waiting. And part of why I wrote it is I felt a little worn with Advent series that asked me to really have high anticipation.
Oh, yeah.
I was like, I wait all the time.
Yeah.
And you're married. So a lot of people automatically attribute that to my singleness, is that I'm waiting on God to do this thing for me. But there are we all have 50 other ways that we are still waiting on the Lord to do something we've asked him to do and hoped that he would do. I'm curious around how do you get yourself to where you love Christmas every year? Is it a fight? Is it a half fight? Is it you talk about in the book that your sweet mom, Miss Claudia, passed away 2 years ago. And your dad, Judge, passed away a while ago. What year was he?
2015.
2015. And your parents are so wonderful.
I know.
I just think what a gift to have known them. So wonderful. My dad loves your parents. And my mom does too. But I just remember my dad thinking so highly of your parents. And you don't have kids, and you hoped to have kids, and you talk about infertility in the book. And so will you talk a little bit about, for our friends listening who are I thought God would do this by now for 1,000 different things, marriage, kids, a different job, a healthier body, someone getting healthier, someone else not losing people that we love. How do you get yourself to where you hang up all the greenery again?
Oh, that's such a great question. And, one of the things is the fact that God has given me, through all of these seasons of loss and disappointment, he has given me a much larger vision of what home and family mean.
Wow.
Because when my husband and I, moved into our old farmhouse, which is very much a character in the book.
Yes, no kidding.
I really assumed that we were just going to fill it up with kids. That was just what I'd prepared for. And, it was a great shock for me to realize, oh, hang on. God does not give us everything we want, even good desires. And he doesn't spare us from the sufferings in this world. But what he does is show up for us in the details of our personal stories in ways that are unmistakable, in ways that no one else would even know that we needed, that are so intimate and so precious. And so, through that, I've come to the beyond conviction. Just kind of my life mantra is that sorrow is not the enemy of joy. It is not.
Wow.
It totally has the potential to lead us into a deeper intimacy with Christ. And anything that, facilitates that is precious to us. That doesn't mean that we love the sorrow or the thorns, of course. I'm not trying to be pious about it, but anything that pins us to his feet, is ultimately is a beautiful thing.
Yeah.
And so, in terms of the whole decorating and doing all the greenery and the having people over and all the traditions, there have been years that it has been extremely hard. And of course, I've scaled back by necessity, just, walking through seasons of grief. But at the same time, I've found that the traditions that we have in place have really carried us and given me the ability to articulate my hope in the face of, seeming hopelessness, to say, no, here's what's true. And, not out of like some kind of enforced false sense of merriment, but, no, I want an embodied hope. Yeah. I want to look around at my house and look around at my table and, see the people there that I've invited to come and celebrate, as an embodiment of what I know is absolutely true. Mm-hmm. And, the Christmas after my mother died, one of the sweetest gifts of that Christmas was realizing, we don't really keep our traditions so much as they keep us.
Wow.
And, just kind of falling into some of the things that had become so habitual over the years, it just kind of carried me. Yeah. But on Christmas night, and I write about this in the book, but it had just been such a dark year and a dark Advent, and it just felt like the scene in Narnia, like always winter and never Christmas. Yeah. But we'd invited all these friends for Christmas dinner, and I just remember being assailed by joy that night as we sat around the table laughing and telling silly jokes and just, celebrating our hope, at ages from 18 to 92, seriously. Yeah. And just the joy that was in that room just absolutely caught my heart. Yeah. And I was like, this is what it means for God to set a table for us in the presence of our enemies. Wow. Because what greater enemy is there than death?
Yes, yes. It is a beautiful thing to read about in the book and to hear you talk about, because so often what I love you didn't do. So often what people do is, I don't have everything I want, but God has given me the other things. You didn't say but. You said, I don't have everything I want. I've grieved that. And God has been really good to, like, it's holding both of those things that in the holidays can feel profoundly difficult. It feels a lot easier to do that on like May 12th than it does on December 24th.
It is so hard.
Yeah.
But the Lord is so tender. He is so tender, and He sees that. Mm-hmm. And, I just, I just wouldn't give anything for what I've learned of Him.
Yeah. Hey friends, just interrupting this conversation to tell you about one of our incredible partners, KiwiCo. Okay, attention shoppers. If you are trying to figure out a gift for a mini BFF in your life that is both fun and helps them learn something, you've got to check out KiwiCo. This year, they're offering KiwiCo clubs to engage kids on a whole journey of seriously fun learning. So instead of just one KiwiCo crate to work on and learn from, they get to go on a comprehensive learning journey. Seriously, this would be such a fun gift. Your mini BFFs will learn the fundamentals through hands-on projects that build on each other, and they'll progressively improve their skills with each new project they work on. There are really cool projects too. It's everything from engineering their own robot to art and design. KiwiCo has 5 different clubs you can choose from with unique topics like science, technology, engineering, art, and math. So the cool thing is, no matter what your kids are into, there will be a project they love. And when you're part of the KiwiCo Club, it's more than just getting a crate. Members get really great perks like 10% off orders, free shipping in the U.S., and early access to new crates. One of the best things about your crate is that KiwiCo does the legwork for you and provides you everything you need. Tinker, create, and innovate with awesome gifts from KiwiCo. Get up to 50% off your first crate at kiwico.com, and the promo code is That Sounds Fun. Again, that's up to 50% off your first crate at kiwico.com, and the promo code is That Sounds Fun. Remember that link and pretty much every other link you could ever hope for, we put in the show notes below, or we will send them straight to you on Friday in our AFD Week in Review email, the email we hope is the best email of your week. If you're not getting that, you are missing out. Go sign up for that in the show notes as well. Okay, now back to our conversation with Lanier. I spoke Saturday to a large group of next gen leaders, and I was speaking about singleness and marriage and saying these are both really reliable paths to an abundant life.
Amen.
And I just kept thinking, like, what a gift for them to hear that at 20, because I think it might save some pain when you're 40.
Yes.
But even as when you're writing about, in the book, when you're writing about holiday traditions, going like, man, there is more than one path to finding joy in these holiday seasons. We think it's supposed to look like the movies where the whole family is supposed to get together and everyone's supposed to be doing this, this, and this. And the Downs family traditions don't look anything like that. I stay in Nashville. I wake up in my house by myself on Christmas morning. And then, because we don't do Christmas till the 28th or something. We do Christmas Eve instead of Christmas Eve.
Yeah.
And so we are days after.
Yeah.
And so I stay here and I have totally different traditions that bring me joy and sadness.
Yeah.
Right at the same time.
Well, and we have to open our hearts to both. And that's another thing I've learned. Like, it is so tempting when we're hurting to just kind of steel our hearts against it and kind of shut down to the full range of sorrow.
Yeah.
And not that we wallow in it, but, opening ourselves to it, not, and ultimately we're opening our hearts to the Lord. Like, any defense mechanisms we throw up are against him,
Yes.
But when we open ourselves to that process, our capacity for joy is exponential. But the flip side, if we resist it, like, it diminishes our capacity for joy.
Yes.
And we don't want to do that. That's tragic. Joy is what we're made for.
Yeah, that's right. And to say, I will protect myself from pain is actually to shut off both.
Yeah, it is.
And it is. I did not know that until way into my 30s, probably halfway into my 30s.
Yeah.
So that means I got a good 70 years to live it out. But will you talk a little bit about when you had Rob and Katie over for Christmas and their family? Because I think that is such a good example. There's a family here. I saw them yesterday, and we talked about, I go to their house on Christmas morning. And so inviting people in, it's a beautiful thing. And y'all did that with Rob. But you got to tell about Rob and Katie, who we know and love. And
oh my gosh,
they have a crazy life.
Love them so, so much. And I mean, that, to me was one of the first, like, realizations that, the family Christmas dinner doesn't have to look the way that we expect it to.
Yeah.
And it was actually the Christmas that my dad was really sick, and it was just going to be Philip and my mom and me on Christmas. And I just, it's not that I just wanted bodies around my dinner table. I wanted to celebrate big, and I just felt the need. And just to really, again, like, kind of set up a defiance in the face of the darkness that just felt like it was closing in. And I was like, we need to and I was like, Philip, I just want to invite somebody, but I don't know who. And I just kept praying about it. And then all of a sudden it just popped into my head. Oh my goodness, like, invite Rob and Katie. They're some of our very best friends.
Yes.
They have 8 children.
8 children.
4 of whom are adopted and they have special needs kids, and they are just the most beautiful family, and we love them so much, and they're so much fun. But my instant assumption was like, they have plans of their own. Everybody has everybody's got plans.
Right.
Everybody's got family, everybody's got plans, everybody's got traditions. But, it felt vulnerable, which is silly because she's one of my very best friends.
Yeah.
But it felt vulnerable to just, like, reach out and go, hey. I mean, I texted her. I didn't even call her. I was just like, hey, this is crazy, but, do y'all want to come for a Christmas dinner? And she texted me back, and I think at first she was like, are you crazy? But yes.
She's like, we come as a pack of 10. Are you sure?
And we just couldn't believe it. We could not believe that they wanted to come, that the kids would be willing to leave all their Christmas presents, and come and have Christmas dinner with us. And
did you cook for everybody?
I did. Yes. And it just gave me a lot of joy that year, And I remember Katie's daughter, Clara, she had the sparkly, sequin tulle dress.
Yes.
She asked if she could help. And I can't even remember how old she was at the time. She was probably 9, 10, maybe.
Yeah.
Maybe not even that old. But I had some potatoes in a pot, and I was like, could you just stir this little sauce? And she took it and sat on the ground with her little spoon and, like, mashed those potatoes within an inch of their lives. And we were, like, stepping over her, as we were. And, oh, my gosh, it was the happiest, most joyful Christmas. And I remember just, singing Christmas carols with all the kids. And Elizabeth Jane like stomping around with her little plastic horn that I'd given them and their Christmas crackers.
Gosh,
and, it was great.
So talk for a minute, if you don't mind, from the place of a family who wanted children and does not have them.
Mm-hmm.
There are so many of our friends listening who wish they had kids on Christmas morning.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
So how do you, even just thinking about this year, what can they do to find joy like that? Is it joyful being around other kids?
For us it is.
Yeah.
And I think that is...
Were there years that it wasn't?
To be honest, Annie, no.
Yeah. Same for me.
No.
I'm always up for it. But I know
We're
there's
always
got to
up
be
for
times
it.
for people where it's harder.
But, also we realize when everybody goes home, we're like, oh, it's pretty quiet around here. It's not,
exactly right.
We can just kind of clean up and get some rest.
That's right.
But no, I think that just really embracing the children in our life. So many of the things that we do at Christmas are for the kids. Mm-hmm. The 12th night party is 100% for the kids. We make that very plain.
It's so fun. Though.
Like the parents are welcome and we love them, but this is for the kids.
That's probably why I liked it so much. I was like, let's go. This is my kind of party out here at the Rough House.
But that doesn't mean it's not hard, and I think it's been really, really, really important for me to be able to differentiate between sadness and envy, and because envy is like drinking poison, and we have to be really careful about that.
How did you differentiate? How do you know when it's that?
I think it's just how it feels.
Okay.
You
just kind of have to pause and go, oh, this is actually me.
I think it's just really paying attention.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
And, gosh, nobody's ever asked me that. But, envy just feels yucky.
Yeah. It's making me think how often we talk about comparison on Instagram. I wonder if the truer thing is
I think it's at the heart.
Envy on Instagram.
I think it really is. And, and I don't want that to sound harsh when people are really hurting and suffering, but I think the quicker we cut to the chase and say, wait a minute, that has no place. The Lord is near the brokenhearted.
Yeah.
But, envy is something we have to let him root out of our hearts.
Yes.
Like that. We have to be real careful.
Easier to find joy without envy?
Absolutely. I think it's impossible to find it with envy. That's been my experience.
Yeah.
And I haven't articulated that until this moment.
It's beautiful. I haven't thought about it at all. I'm the worst about considering jealousy a sin. I know it's a sin. I'm the worst about considering it in me and calling that's jealous. You actually feel jealous of them.
Yeah.
And envious of them. So it's interesting you talk about that because that probably happens in me more than I realize because I don't know how to name it like I know how to name pride or like I know how to name lust. It is not as easy to name jealousy.
Well, it's subtle because it is so close to something that's holier, or that is holy. Jealousy. Yeah. I guess there's a holy jealousy.
Yeah.
But
so, okay, let's give people an example. We're sitting there on Christmas and we start feeling, we're watching maybe our sibling with their family and we don't have family. Or we are watching a movie and going like, what? I'm not speaking to my family right now. And therefore I'm at my apartment in whatever city and I'm watching this family on TV. I'm watching Best Christmas Pageant Ever and it's adorable. And so we go like, oh, I may be actually jealous. What do we do? What do we do next?
I think we ask for help. From the Lord,
okay.
And I think we repent.
Okay.
And then we
I love that you
receive
told
his
us to ask for
comfort.
help first.
Yeah.
That's so sweet. That's so much sweeter than, ask it and get forgiveness and then ask for help. You're like, no, ask for help and then ask and then repent. Yeah. What does it look like on the other side of repenting of envy? What happens in you?
I think that we tap into the resources of the Holy Spirit. It's not something that we can produce. Our righteousness is of Christ. And it's something that we receive and participate in and allow ourselves to be conformed to. Not trying to over spiritualize, but that's the fact.
Yeah. No.
We can't do it.
Listen, I am so pro over spiritualizing. I'm like, I don't know how we can over spiritualize because everything matters.
Everything matters.
You know me, Lanier. I'm like, everything matters. The Lord is always talking. Will you talk a little bit about the house fire? Because that's that is such a memorable part of y'all's story to all of us who love you is just like this, one of the pillars of Philip and Lanier. But tell the story, and then tell us a little bit about like how do you when you have built such deep roots in a home and around Advent and around Eastertide. I mean, you don't play around on Easter either. And so when so much of your rhythms are around this beautiful home and then there's a fire, what then?
Yeah. In 2017, we had just come home from a month-long camping trip. And I was so looking forward to sleeping in my bed. And I, anyway, threw some laundry in and went outside. And next thing we knew, our house was on fire. And it was a contents fire. Like the dryer just like combusted. We don't really know what happened. But anyway, thank the Lord we were home and the fire department got there, within 5 minutes. But
Did you just turn around and like it was going up?
Pretty much, like we were in our camper because we had just gotten back from this long trip, and Philip was like, "Oh, let's kind of have a soft landing here." Like, we had a frozen pizza, and he's like, "Why don't we cook pizza in the camper and just kind of pretend for one night we're not quite home?" And I'm the one that's like bustling in and like putting everything away and doing all the laundry. And anyway, he said, "Let's just make a pizza out in the Airstream," and we were making it or eating the pizza and had the air conditioning going and record player going. So we couldn't hear, but our dog was with us and she started barking and I opened the door and like the house was on fire. And I wish I could unsee it. I'll never not remember that moment. Anyway, the upshot of it was that, that had always been one of our biggest fears because an old house, it's built of heart pine. Like, it's like light or not.
Right.
But the good thing is that it takes that old wood a long time to get going. And so by the time the fire department arrived,
you just had to stand there, watch it burn until the fire department got there.
Pretty much. Yeah. It was just a nightmare. It was an absolute nightmare. I will never, ever, ever forget that night. The next day when we were able to go in and survey the damage, we realized that the fire hoses and the water and the smoke were actually did more damage than the fire. The fire, we had to take about a third of our house back to the studs. But we had to like pull down all the ceilings. We had to dumpster full of belongings out in the yard. And anyway, it was a year-long restoration, which is a miracle. It should have been much longer.
Wow.
That's a whole nother story. But yeah, we had a rider on our insurance policy that they would put us up in a property of comparable size, and we're like, no, we need to be here. Like we want to be, and so we convinced them to get us a RV.
I remember,
and they loved us. Our insurance company loved us.
Yeah.
So they were like, "Hey, if you want to take any trips or anything,
right,
we'll pay for it."
Yeah.
But we didn't have time to take trips because we were, up to our eyeballs in the restoration. But anyway, so we lived in our backyard for a year. So it was a long time before I got to sleep in my bed again. Yes. But during that process, it was such a refining time because we had poured our heart and soul into that house. And the fire, most of the damage occurred in the places that we had put our most love into, And we were a lot younger when we had done it. We were like, oh gosh, we've got to do this again.
Right.
But I remember one day I was sitting in the den and we were getting pretty close to things, we were coming down the stretch, for sure. The end was in sight. And I have this, it's actually illustrated in the book. Jennifer illustrated it. I didn't know she was going to do it, and it was the sweetest surprise. But I have this motto painted over my bookcase in the den, and it says, "The wilderness shall blossom as the rose." Yeah. And that is the theme of my life. Like, God is always taking the most barren, impossible places of our lives and turning them into something beautiful, not, exchanging them, but transforming.
Wow.
So I had that motto, and I thought that when everything got pulled out and thrown in the dumpster, that motto had gone too. And my husband actually found it in a pile of rubble. And
gosh.
I was like, I can't believe this. So I Jennifer, my illustrator friend, she had actually come for the weekend. And she said, well, I want to help you do something. Like, what can we do? And I said, well, I've got this motto. Like, can we fix it? Like, we need to paint over it, like paint over the lettering. And so that was really sweet. Like, we got to recreate that. But right before we hung it back up, I had always wanted, like in the original one, I'd always wanted to recreate these Tudor-style roses, like on either side of the lettering, and I never had a chance to do it. And I'm like, well, it's sitting on the ground now. It's much easier to paint it on the ground rather than. And so I was basically copying these Tudor roses from a William Morris print, and I was, tracing it out by eye, but matching the colors, and anyway, I was just sitting there painting like a child, like I was just kind of like paint by number, and I felt the Lord say, "This is the most creative thing you've ever done." And I was like, whoa, what? Like, what does that even mean? Because it had been such like I couldn't write, I couldn't read. I felt like I couldn't create anything beautiful that year. Like everything was so hard. And here I am, like sitting on the floor, like copying somebody else's, design. Yes. And I realized, like, restoration is always what God is doing, and it is an act that He's inviting us to participate with Him in, and we don't have to reinvent the wheel. We just have to participate, like bring what we have, and even if it means bringing it again, like we'd already done all this, and we're doing it again, like we're just beauty from ashes, and that just really stuck with me, like that was one of the treasures of that dark time.
Is that a Bible verse, or is it a quote from a writer?
So it comes from Isaiah 35.
Okay.
And it's the passage, if I can quote it correctly. It's the wilderness and the solitary place shall rejoice for them, and the desert shall rejoice and blossom as the rose.
Wow.
And so the wilderness shall blossom as a rose is kind of the condensed version of that. But
gosh, that's beautiful. Hey friends, just interrupting this conversation one more time to tell you about one of our incredible partners, Shopify. It is Cyber Monday, so I know you're probably multitasking and online shopping while you listen to this podcast. Me too. You may not think much about the online checkout process when you're buying gifts for your family, but to businesses, small and large, it really matters. And for millions of businesses, the behind-the-scenes magic is Shopify. Think Skims, Allbirds, Thrive Cosmetics. They all use Shopify, and we do too. ShopAnnieFDowns.com is powered by Shopify, and they make it easy for us to get fun merch in your hands. Hint, hint, we're also running a massive sale, but it ends at midnight. So ShopAnnieFDowns.com. Do not miss it. If you're growing your business, make sure your commerce platform is ready to sell wherever your customers are scrolling or strolling, on the web, in your store, in their feed, everywhere in between. Businesses that sell more sell on Shopify. Upgrade your business and get the same checkout we use at ShopAnnieFDowns.com. Sign up for your $1 per month trial period at Shopify.com/soundsfun, all lowercase. Again, that's Shopify.com/soundsfun to upgrade your selling today. Shopify.com/soundsfun. And now back to finish up our conversation with Lanier.
That sounds fun.
One of the things I love that you say in the book is that you and Philip kept saying to people, we are not renovating this house. We're restoring and resurrecting this house. Like, it is not a renovation.
Yeah.
That little bit feels like the same thing, wilderness and road. Like, we are not making this into something that it isn't. So my question for you is, how much technology do y'all have in your house? Because even when you say you texted Katie, I'm like, Lanier is my one friend that I thought never would get a cell phone. So do y'all have like Alexa?
No, we don't. Well,
I can't imagine you do.
So, my husband is a software engineer.
Right.
So, all that's like, we have lots of like plugs and cords and wires and drawers and things that I don't know what they go to, but but we don't have a television.
Yeah.
And we haven't had television really. We've never bought a television.
I've never known you to have a television. Yeah.
I got rid of 4 when we got married.
Yeah,
but,
that's right.
But yeah, I remember when I got my smartphone, Philip was like, "Are you sure?
I know.
Are you sure you really want this? Because it's going to change your life." And I was like, "Everybody's got one."
Yeah.
But But yeah, so I think, this sounds dumb. I think we have an Alexa in the barn just because Philip knows I won't have it in the house.
Yeah, yeah.
But I don't think it's ever really worked. Like Philip would be like, Alexa, play some REM.
Yeah.
And then, it starts playing, Smashing Pumpkins or something. So.
Right. I just thought as I was reading the book and you were talking about the restoration of the home, I was like, there's no way it is what a lot of us do of like, now the speakers are all smart speakers and no world. I think if I was a betting woman, I think you'd pick candlelight over lights any day.
Amen.
I know. I knew you would.
In fact, I'm having a serious light bulb problem because all of our light bulbs are burning out and I can't find like energy efficient ones that like are warm enough. And so like our house is so dark.
And with the time change and now that it's going into winter, I know.
It's crazy.
Okay, let's spend a couple of minutes as we finish up. Well, I have a baked squash question. Can I ask you a baked squash question?
Please do, yes.
Because I want to make this recipe that you have on page 3. All throughout the book, not only is it these stories of grief and joy and family and all that, there's also a lot of great recipes. You tell us how to set a table. I mean, the whole thing is such a joy. Really, this book is such a joy. But in the Christmastide section, you have a baked squash recipe. Mm-hmm. It has no cheese in it.
No cheese.
Am I supposed to, can I add cheese or no? Is it going to be better without cheese?
Well,
I've never seen a Southern squash casserole without cheese.
I want to say try it.
Okay.
Try it.
I'm going to. It just is. Okay. We'll do it. I'm just telling you, I couldn't believe. I was like, oh, I'm going to use Lanier's recipe. That'll be so fun. Then I was like, there's no cheese anywhere in this.
Well, try it both ways. If you must add cheese, I would say 2 cups on top.
I must. Okay. Thank you for having
don't
that.
Play around if you're going to
Yeah. Do it. Make it a layer. I'll do it without. That was okay. I need to get that out. Also, you talk about in the book, you make this list on page 288, how to love yourself while you are loving others. And I think that's really interesting because a lot of our friends listening are the ones in charge of Christmas.
Yes.
And they've made recipe lists and grocery lists. They're wrapping the presents and they got to do the stockings. And I think a lot of time Advent is lost for the ones in charge.
Absolutely. I've been there.
So, right.
That's why I made the list.
Yeah, that's right. So talk about why this matters. Why does it matter that we think about ourselves? Because it's great things. It's like, do a devotional, read it, keep the meals simple, but also like take your vitamins. You said take your vitamins. And so why does this matter? Talk a little bit to the people, women mostly, who are in charge.
Yeah. So I mentioned early in the book that, Christmas can be a place of rest.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of people are like, what are you talking about?
Yeah, right.
But, in our church, we're always talking about working from a place of rest. Yeah. And of course, that is our resting place in the beloved. That is our acceptance. We don't have to do anything to earn God's favor and love. All we have to do is rest in it and accept it. And so bringing that mentality into our preparations for Christmas really gives us permission to not do it all, and to prioritize rest, because without it, like, we're not going to have anything of real value to bring to our people. And, just giving ourselves space and again, just permission. To jettison the things that are not contributing to our peace, and to just make sure that we are giving from a place of replenishment.
Wow. Yeah.
I think it's really important, because
even if it's just a 10-minute nap.
Even if it's a 10-minute nap, it makes all the difference.
Yeah,
right. And I really try to work that into my plans. I mean, I'm not like the most efficient planner in the world. That's just such an understatement. But at Christmas, I try to be super intentional about it, because I want to be present. I don't want to be so tired that I can't enjoy it.
Right.
I don't want to be in tears on Christmas night because it all went by so fast and I'm just incoherently tired. And so it is really important, and it's okay to care for ourselves. Yes. And I just really want to send that message out to women in particular, who's going to take care of you? Yeah,
that's right. Talk a little bit about Christmastide. How do we do the 12 days of Christmas? You give some great lists in here. There's a whole section on Christmastide. why do we need to keep observing Christmas for 12 days? Why don't we stop on December 25th and then just take a couple of weeks off?
Well, because I think there's just not enough room for all the goodness. You know, I mean, we were talking earlier about how Christmastide as a season, really makes room for our joy.
I love Eastertide too.
Yeah,
I love Eastertide.
50 days.
50 days of celebration.
Yeah.
It is longer than Lent.
Yes. And while Christmastide is not longer than Advent, I mean, we need both.
Yeah.
And we've gotten to this point. We've done the waiting, and now we need to savor. Like, we need anticipation and savoring in our lives.
Wow.
Like, we need life
And that's
to be
what we get to do
bookended.
in the 12 days is really savor Christmas.
Yeah, that's what it's about.
Yeah.
And, I feel like it's getting a little more traction in our world just because people are tired of feeling so rushed.
Yeah. It is one of the things I love about our rhythm is our Christmas is very long.
Yeah.
Because we don't even see family for 3 days after Christmas.
Yeah. And I mean, we usually have Ivester Christmas on the 28th.
Yeah.
So, or there, last year we had it on January the 6th.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Epiphany.
Yeah, which is another one of my favorite days. But yeah, it's countercultural, and I love that. Like, I love countercultural.
Yes.
I love standing still a little bit, and just saying, what's going to happen if I don't get carried along in the current? Nothing.
Yes.
Except goodness.
Yeah.
And just, Philip and I have tried to work a few rhythms into the 12 days of Christmas, but I keep it very fluid. I don't, it's not a rigid thing. It's not like we have to do this on this day. We have to do this on this day.
Yeah.
But here are the things that we like to do during this season. Put a puzzle together, take a walk in the woods with the dogs, or, have people over, for tea, or, one of the things I don't think I put this in the book, but one of the things I love to do Christmas week is have some of my best friends over just to sing.
Oh, fun.
And we've been doing that for years, and we'll just have a cup of tea and like sing some of our favorite Christmas songs.
And you play the piano?
I play the piano.
When you do it? I know you do, girl. I can see the whole thing in my head. In the book, you give us 12 ways to keep the 12 days and actually talk about all these other feasts that I did not know about that happen in those 12 days.
Yeah.
And so there's just this invitation to like do this little thing, like fill up your bird feeder. And I mean, it just is really, it does slow everything down a little bit.
Yeah. And I think that, when we're seeking to embody what we believe, the intention accomplishes that. We integrate what we do with what we believe.
Wow.
And it just, it does slow us down.
Yeah. Okay, finished with talking about Epiphany. I am a big Epiphany fan.
Yes,
it is my favorite day of the year. And I did not know the 3 reasons Epiphany exists. I always had the 3 kings. But in the book, as I'm reading, I was like, wait, there are like 3 really specific things in the Bible around Epiphany.
Yeah.
Can you talk about that for a minute?
Yeah. So the baptism of Jesus in the River Jordan, the wedding at Cana, his first miracle.
And why are those all tied to Epiphany? We don't know they all happened on January 6th.
No. Traditionally, the reason that these have been linked is because there are moments in which God has revealed himself, his Godhead, his, revealed in human form.
Yeah. So what do you do on Epiphany?
So our church usually has an Epiphany service, which we love. That's one of my favorite services of the year. And I love getting to sing, We Three Kings and the First Noel. And so that's very special. And sometimes I start taking my decorations down, but I usually wait till January the 7th.
Do you? You wait till after Epiphany?
I just really, as much as we, have the 12th night party and okay, it's all gotta get we've had 12th night parties where I'm like, everybody bring your Christmas greenery and we'll burn it, but they get to my house and all my greenery is still
You're like, I said bring yours. I didn't say you were getting mine.
You're not having mine. But Epiphany is a quiet day. Typically it's a reflective day, but it's the day that it really feels more like New Year's Day to me than New Year's Day.
Yeah. I think there's this opportunity for believers to reevaluate the start of the year, that January 1 is not, you do not have to have your year's goals set by January 1.
It's too much pressure.
It's too much pressure. And especially this year, we don't come back to work until Epiphany. The 6th is our first day back to work.
Yeah.
And so it's very, I have so often, my team is hearing this for the first time. I've so often considered like, do we not come back until the 7th? Do we give everybody Epiphany as one more day? But I'm like, no, we need to go back to work.
Yeah.
But it is, it feels like this gift at the end of the holidays where we get to, it feels like a dark day, but but it gives us from January 1 to January 6 to think.
Yes. And it's the time, that space between is when I really start asking the Lord to give me a word to name my year.
Yeah.
And not, like some super mystical thing, but just, something that he just keeps causing to rise to the surface in my heart and mind.
Yes.
That I just want to set as my intention for the year.
Wow.
And that takes time, and I don't want to rush that. But usually by Epiphany, that's just kind of settled in my heart. Like, okay, this is my word for the year, which, this year I named my year Margin, which is hilarious because this has been the most
you release a
marginless year of my entire life. So, it's exposed my need for margin. So that's one of my Epiphany traditions, just.
I love it. Well, this is such a gift. I'm so thankful for this book. I can't imagine. I would imagine everyone who knows you feels this, but this feels like Lanier in a book. Oh. I mean, it just is like, here's songs to sing. Here's beautiful art, but here's like deep story and really beautiful essays. And so this just feels like I was so thankful that you've written it. Will you keep writing more books for us? Is that in your heart?
Oh, yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Oh, yeah.
Thank you. Yeah. I really hope so. Unless you're going to start blogging again, I'm going to need this. I'm going to need you to keep doing books or go back to blogging.
Wow.
Okay, let me ask you one final question. We only have 3 weeks this year, and this book goes 4 weeks. What do we do?
Start now.
Okay. Hey, there you go. Read fast. Big on the face. Okay, is there anything we didn't say you want to make sure we cover?
I think so.
Okay, let me ask you this. Lanier, because the show is called That Sounds Fun, tell me what you do for fun.
Well, my husband and I love to travel. We don't get to do it as much as this is not a season that we get to do a lot of it.
Yeah.
But what sounds fun to both of us is a little stone cottage in southwest of England.
Yeah. Wales,
preferably Cornwall.
Okay, Cornwall.
Southern coast of Cornwall. With an easy walk to the beach.
Very Poldark of you.
Very Poldark.
Yeah.
Easy access to the Southwest Coast Path and long walks and wayside picnics. Yeah. And that's my idea of fun.
Where in the world have y'all not been that you still want to see? Do you have places left?
To be honest, there are places that we just want to go back to.
Yeah.
Like, I wouldn't mind, seeing Greece one day, but I don't have to go there.
Yeah. But you got to get back to Cornwall.
We've got to get back to Cornwall. Yeah, we've promised ourselves. So.
Okay. I agree. I've never been there, but I agree. You need to get back, and I just need to come. I need to see it for the first time ever. I love you. Thank you for doing this.
Love you too.
So glad to see you. What a treat. I always get to have friends on. It's like one of the rules of guests. It is very rare that it's friends of 30 years.
Oh.
So I'm so thankful.
It's been very special.
Yeah,
so.
Thank you. Oh, y'all, isn't she awesome? Okay, I am dying to hear what you think. She is just the most calming voice, right? Oh, it's so beautiful. Listen, go get you some copies of Glad and Golden Hours. I'm telling you, this is like a legacy book you're going to want to have every single Advent, every single Christmastide. And if you go ahead and order it today, it is going to hold your hand through this entire season and the 12 days of Christmas. I'm telling you, this is the book. This is the book. Glad and Golden Hours by Lanier Ivester. Go get it. And go follow Lanier on social media. Tell her thank you so much for being on the show. If you enjoyed this episode, I think you'll also really love our episode with Tish Oxenrider from our previous Advent series and Father Mike. Oh my gosh, I love Father Mike. If you have any questions from this episode, you can drop them in the Q&A box on your Spotify app. If you're a Spotify listener like me, it's almost time for our Wrapped at the end of the Spotify listening year. Or you can send the questions straight to us on Instagram at That Sounds Fun Podcast. We'll try to answer them there, and make sure you are following us there. Next year's going to be wild. So you want to be at That Sounds Fun Podcast. If you need anything else from me, I'm embarrassingly easy to find. Annie F. Downs on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, TikTok, Annie F. Downs, TSF. Anywhere you may need me, that's how you can find me. I think that's it for me today, friends. Go out or stay home. Do something that sounds fun to you, and I will do the same. Today, what sounds fun to me? Well, I'm in New York for a couple of days, and it sounds fun to me to see some friends tonight up here. A little Christmas time in New York City. Y'all have a great week. We'll see you back here on Thursday with one of your favorites and mine. It's our friend Bob Goff. We'll see y'all Thursday.
That sounds fun.
That sounds fun.
Oh, that sounds fun.
Check 1, 2 on the microphone. NEF down in your car to your home. Every week it's something new. A deep talk or an interview. She'll make you laugh, she'll make you cry. When it's dark out, she's a light. When you're down, get you feeling right.